Lorraine Adams, I would like to welcome you to the Women's Power Hour show. So fantastic of you to join us today.
Thank you. Very welcome.
Wonderful. Now, Lorraine, you're a matchmaker, you're an author, a romance expert and coach, and I'm really interested to share all of that with the listeners and how that also relates into self-care. But it'd be really good to just find out a little bit more about you and your journey into entrepreneurship, because you've been an entrepreneur for a relatively long time.
Yeah, too many years. Well, more years than I can remember. I started actually when I was about 22. So I left school at 16 and started working, came up to the big city and did a few little jobs and did really well, always got promoted quickly. And I had this entrepreneurial spirit through my father. I think my father always worked very hard. There was 5 of us kids and he always had a job, but he always had a little sideline on the side. Nice. Just to kind of make it for those extra treats and holidays and Christmas and things. And as far back as I can remember, that was my dad, almost like a kind of Del boy.
Nice.
And I think that's where my entrepreneurial spirit kind of came from. So from the age of 22, I've never actually worked for anybody else. I've had my own business, and there's been a few different businesses. First of all, just starting off little sandwich business and things like that.
Yes.
Progressing onto a PR company, which was actually quite a good grown-up business, and I did very well with that. And a lingerie business as well. Wow. And then in 2000, I launched the dating company, Gorgeous Networks. So yeah, it's been a really lovely journey, and I feel blessed that bringing up a daughter that I've been able to be an entrepreneur and kind of experience all the types of things that you want to with your children, going to their little recitals and things at school and their school trips, etc. Yeah. And always being around for my daughter. I've only got one daughter, so I kind of wanted to make the most of it. And so being an entrepreneur has actually been amazing to combine it with motherhood, because you are on your own agenda, so that's been great.
So there's been that freedom actually to be able to choose how you work, which can make a massive difference, of course. Now, I know that when we spoke before, you told me there was kind of a prompt to you going into the dating agency world, why you ended up going there. So can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, my partner and I, my daughter's dad, we'd been together for 17 years, and he was actually my first, real proper boyfriend. Oh. And we separated when my daughter was 2.5. And so I thought, I've got to kind of really get myself, because I'd had a couple of years off. I had a couple of little projects, but I had a couple of years off. And I thought, okay, I've got to get back into work, and got back into the PR. And then I started thinking, I've got to get out dating and doing something. Yeah. And online dating hadn't really materialized at that time in the year 2000. There were sites, but we didn't look at online dating like we do now. It was almost like kind of secret rendezvous. There were traditional dating agencies. But then when I looked into them, I just thought, oh my God, like these are just for kind of sad train spotters. There was nobody I considered that was like me. I was in my mid-30s.
Yes.
So, and apart from that, there were like the classified ads at the back of the newspapers, etc. But there wasn't anything else. And I thought, this is just crazy. Like, apart from going out to clubs and bars and things, which in my mid-30s with a child, I did still do that, but that wasn't my kind of, it wasn't like I was 25 again,
Yes.
So I thought, okay, I've got to kind of maybe shake up this industry. This is something just waiting to happen. So I stumbled across a phrase, speed dating, which the Jewish community had actually created, because they have traditional matchmakers, and they'd kind of started to get little parties together.
Yes,
lots of people and introducing. So they'd coined the phrase. And so I thought, gosh, that would be really good to just, create some speed dating events. So I started, because of my PR company, I actually sent out a press release before I'd actually even started the dating company or organized an event. And I was like, oh, you know, all the hype, these speed dating events are amazing. This is what they do, you know. And just kind of thinking, okay, let's put it out there, see if I get a little bit of interest, you know, from media. And Friday afternoons, I always used to take off from work to take my daughter out somewhere, to the park, wherever, you know, we wanted to go. I left my assistant and left the office at about midday. And after about an hour, the phone was going crazy. And he was like, you better get back here because this is just going crazy. Everybody wants to know about these speed dating events. They all want to come. I was like, oh my God. So we literally had to create a speed dating event like very, very quickly. And that was it, you know. And the first one I actually did was for Elle magazine, and it was with Tara Palmer Tompkinson, and she was somebody who wanted to speed date all these different, so they kind of, you know, created an event. And and then I just kept creating more and more events and started the company, and it went from there. We called them Gorgeous Get-Togethers.
Amazing. I love that name, by the way, but what a fantastic, I love that whole story.
Still today, it's probably my most successful PR campaign that I've ever had. I've never had a response, you know, quite as crazy as that, to be honest. I think we were in every single national newspaper, you know, every major magazine, across the TV, radio. It was just crazy, really crazy.
But it also shows that there was a need.
Absolutely.
For it.
We'd really hit the nail on the head, you know. It seemed to be what people wanted, you know.
Excellent. Right, well, let's have a little break, Lorraine, and then we'll come back and find out a bit more, I believe.
Okay.
Right, so welcome back, and Lorraine has been sharing a little bit of her entrepreneurial journey and that master PR piece that she pulled off that created the world of speed dating as we know it. Absolutely brilliant. But you've been in the dating space for like 21 years, very much a trailblazer in your industry. What are some of the main changes that you've seen in the way people go about finding partners and relationships?
So I suppose the online dating has made a massive difference. You know, for probably the first 10 years until around 2010, 2011, online dating and kind of meeting through, you know, a third party was still quite a taboo, really. You know, people didn't like to admit that they'd met somebody through those routes. And so it's only really been the last kind of 10 years that it's been something that people, you know, it's just the norm kind of thing. Indeed. And so that's the big thing, really. It's almost strange if you haven't tried some kind of, you know, events or speed dating or matchmaking. I think that's where that is the go-to thing now. So I think that's one of the major changes. In terms of the way that people are, I think I have seen this kind of real dismissive kind of attitude. I think people used to make the most of the opportunities that they had back in the day. You know, if you met somebody, I mean, I know there was always like, you'd go to a bar, swap telephone numbers, and then you'd never hear from them again. But it, you know, you'd most likely were likely to hear from them again. Of course, social media wasn't out then either. Whereas kind of now, people kind of skip over potential opportunities like crazy, and I think so many people are missing out on, you know, finding somebody really compatible, because they're just so dismissive of things that really aren't important when you're looking and thinking about a long-term relationship. People tend to look at, you know, aesthetics and the kind of top layer of unimportant things that aren't really going to be that important going forward in a long-term relationship. You know, things like your values and your temperament and how you're going to kind of cope with, because, you know, at the end of the day, in a relationship, you're going to have highs and lows, and how you're going to cope together in those, you know, challenges and highs and lows. And you know, I think the best part of a long-term relationship is actually the friendship. And this has been borne out, you know, people that have been in long-term relationships, you know, when we've done all kinds of surveys, we've discovered that that is the thing, you know, the friendship that you have, that kind of feeling that you can rely on somebody, that, you know, that you've got somebody to kind of lean on. And, you know, they're the kind of things that a long-term relationship is all about. And of course, you know, there are times, you know, of course you want to be attracted to somebody, but the kind of chemistry, the long-term chemistry, is so much more different. It's when you kind of absolutely love the bones of someone,
yes,
rather than that short-term chemistry that's often just flips in and out very quickly. And I think a lot of people that doesn't really resonate with a lot of people. They don't really get that until they've been in a long-term relationship. So of course the things that are at the top of their wish list don't reflect what they actually really should be looking for. So I do a lot of work with my clients to try and, you know, shift their mindset into that way of thinking. And I think that's why we get a lot of success, because when people actually, you know, really that registers and they really start to realize, that's when the changes start to happen in their lives, and they find somebody relatively rapidly. Whereas you know, sometimes people can be eternally single because they just don't change that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get that, because I think the thing with internet dating is that most people just go to the profile and look at a photo. And I mean, I'm not even sure if they read the profile. It's almost like the photo, and if the photo doesn't fit, move on to the next one.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's what's underneath, what are those values, and that richness that's within, that's going to make it worthwhile spending time with this person, especially if you want a long-term relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, get that totally. Excellent. Okay, so let's have a little break, and then when we come back, just going to talk a little bit more about those online platforms and some of the safety issues or challenges that come with that. Right, welcome back, and we're still with the lovely Lorraine Adams, and we are talking about relationships and the whole industry around that, and Lorraine being an absolute trailblazer in that industry. One of the things that I certainly know that I thought about before I did online dating was, you know, how safe is this? And so my question to you is, you know, how safe do you believe a lot of these online platforms are, considering how much information people put up about themselves and the accessibility?
Well, I know that the online dating platforms are doing, you know, as much as they can, and some more than others, in trying to make their platforms safe. But at the end of the day, you know, if you're a scammer, or, you know, that's at the very worst end of the spectrum. You know, if you get banned, you're going to pop up against somebody else, and usually these are all connected to organized crime. So,
yes,
you know, when you think you're meeting somebody, you know, a soldier who's like, you know, out in wherever, or some, you know, they'll put the most amazing profiles up. They, you know, to tick all everybody's boxes, kind of thing. There'll just be another one that pops up immediately after. So, you know, sadly, online dating and app dating is just completely filled with scammers. And, you know, the next thing down the line is somebody that is, you know, is just a regular person, not a scammer, but somebody who, let's say, is less than genuine.
Yes.
You'll get a lot of people that are in relationships that are not going well, and they find the kind of app dating and online dating a bit of titillation. So you'll soon come across those, because those are the people that just don't want to meet, keep making excuses not to meet.
Yeah.
So I always say to my clients, you know, if you do online dating, or dating through the apps, you know, if you have a connection, go straight to having a call or a video chat, and then you know, go straight to meeting up. And if that doesn't happen, if they make the excuse not to, then just you know, strike them out, because it's just not worth. There's too many people that are kind of play acting. But then, having said that, there are still, you know, a good amount of genuine people that you can meet through apps and online dating. It's just that not knowing, it's just, you could come across somebody and they could be, your lifetime partner.
Yes.
And just as genuine as you. But it's a little bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's almost like, the old cliche, you would have to kiss, 100 frogs before meeting your prince or princess.
Indeed. And I guess in some respects, there's, much like any other online platform, there's pretty much only so much that the companies can do in terms of safety and protection. And then it's a little bit about, what do you put in place? And so you've just said that one of the things that you say to your clients is, get that kind of video chat, something upfront immediately. Are there any other things that you would say to people to absolutely do, even before going to meet somebody?
I mean, I'd always say, tell somebody else where you're going, and perhaps, have yourself on one of your friend locators or something like that, so someone knows where you're going. A few people, and obviously meet somewhere, but don't go around somebody's house. That's the worst thing that you could do. Even on the first night, if you've had a nice night, a nice walk, or a nice, it could even be during the day. Don't kind of go those steps until you've really got to know somebody. I'd say that once you've met them, I wouldn't say it's a good idea to kind of look somebody up through social media and LinkedIn, etc., prior to meeting, because sometimes that can be a little bit disconcerting and sort of put you off. But once you've met them, and if you think, okay, there was a good connection there, I'd quite like to kind of take this another step. You've decided to see each other again, then it's a good time to perhaps just do a little bit of your own research and social media. I mean, as a matchmaker, that's generally what we do. So yes, we would do that on behalf of our clients. So we kind of, we can't really kind of go in too deeply because of the data protection laws. There's not a lot you can do, but you can take those extra precautions on behalf of your clients. And that's what I tell, the people out there who are doing online dating, etc., to do, to just make sure that they are who they say they are, that they're genuine. Even then you could still meet somebody who appears to be really genuine. And then, because as we know, that some of the worst kind of abusers and etc., on their public face is very different to the person they are inside. So, I always say, again, watch out for those little kind of red flags and try and be the person that you are right from the start, warts and all, because, that's going to come out eventually anyway. And, sometimes it's nice to just be, have a little bit of banter about it, about your flaws and etc., to try and encourage the person that you've met to also do the same. And it's in those early days that you find out the little things, and you decide. I mean, obviously, not nobody's perfect, so it's absolutely fine to kind of accept those little flaws, etc., and to give people a chance. But the problem is that it's very important not to go too far down the line when you've seen the red flags, and discuss it with your friends as well, because usually your friends see the red flags before you do. Obviously, matchmaking is a more costly route to go down, but then sometimes you look back and you think, okay, I've spent several years online dating and going out on these dates, and it's costly to go out on a date, to get yourself all ready to get up there. So sometimes it's worth the investment. And there's so many different, I mean, that's what Gorgeous Networks, our platform's all about, because we've got a lists of lots of different agencies, everything that's out there, dating events, for people to kind of make an inspired choice, and to be able to shop around and get the best type of deal for them and the best type of service for them. And if there's lots of different types of services. So I think it's about having choice. And making the decision. Often a matchmaker is somebody that you would have a good rapport with. So, it might not be that somebody's service is better than another. It might just be that you just gel with that particular matchmaker and have a good rapport with them. And that's just as important as what kind of service or how they operate. So
yeah, absolutely. Which is very much the same across, the world of coaching. As a coach, not everybody is, I'm not the right fit for everyone, and everyone's not the right fit for me. So, it's no different, being willing to kind of search out who that right fit is and kind of engaging with them.
What I would say for people to do their research and have a chat to several different people and find out how kind of quickly people get back to them, things like that, because all those types of things, when if you've sort of 3 or 4 dates in and you still haven't met your partner, as long as you feel that you're progressing,
yes.
It's not going to happen just like that, just because you found a matchmaker. And a lot of people do kind of think, they have that attitude, right, that's it, I'm paying somebody now, all my dreams are going to come true, I'm going to meet George Clooney, and it's just that's not going to happen. It just means you've got someone in your corner that's going to help guide you in the right direction, help make you make the right decisions, bring the right opportunities at your door, and just increase the opportunities for you to finding somebody. And usually that works, but it can only work if you go along with that and you don't kind of stick to your own, the kind of challenges and hurdles and mistakes that you've been making previously. If you kind of just start afresh and take the advice and go down a new route altogether, and then it will work, without doubt.
Okay, we'll step away, have a little break, and then we will come back and speak a little bit more about understanding and seeing those signs of an unhealthy relationship, because I think that's also really important.
Okay, great.
Right, so we are back, and we've been having some fantastic conversations around relationships, matchmaking, and all the wonderful work that Lorraine does and how she helps all of her clients. We've talked about the online platforms and really how safe we can be and try to be, whilst the actual platforms themselves do what they can. The other thing that I really wanted to ask you about, Lorraine, was about relationships themselves, because you're helping people to connect with hopefully a long-term partner. But as we have already kind of touched on, we know that somebody can show up being one thing and then being something quite different a little bit further down the line. What would you say are the early warning signs of an unhealthy relationship?
So I think one of the things that I've always noticed is that generally, when we're talking about men, for example, so you generally, if somebody comes along and you find that they're trying to get very deep, almost you feel like they're trying to open you up, they almost feel like a therapist, and you go away thinking, I've had clients that come back and say, oh, I felt like I've known this person all my life, and I was able to really open up my heart. That's always a bit of a warning sign, because often you find that controlling and people that are bullies tend to want to get into finding your vulnerable spots. Yes. So that's what they do. They open you up right from the get-go, and they find out, all about your life, what's happened, what your soft spots are. And that gives them control. It's usually men that usually have no kind of real self-confidence. They might appear confident on the surface, but they have no kind of real self-esteem, and they feel that to make themselves happy, they have to be in control. And generally they've, for whatever reason that is, that controlling behavior, can turn quite abusive. So I think, I really love to see young women, I love chatting to my daughter who's 25, who have a whole different healthy attitude to dating than I had when I was young, because it was the equality, wasn't wasn't as it is today. You know, I know we still haven't got there yet, but
yes,
we are getting closer. And, you know, you went into a relationship kind of looking to please your man, you know, and to be the perfect kind of partner in every way.
yes.
And that's considerably less with young people when they're dating. And, you know, often I'll say to my daughter, oh, you know, didn't you do this or didn't you? And she'll be like, no, of course I didn't. You know, that's not for me. And she'll really put me in my place, you know, and it's great to remind me. And I think, no, you're absolutely right. So, you know, my advice has kind of changed as you know, life has changed over the last 21 years. You know, I updated my book recently, because there was so much in it that just wasn't relevant to today's dating kind of narrative.
Yes.
So I definitely think that's one of the things that, you know, you should look out for a future controlling person. They might not appear to be controlling or a bully, but they're the people that try to open you up and find everything about you. And so you sometimes think, oh, this is a wonderful person. They're so caring. They're so interested in me. But actually, that is a red flag. So I would always, if somebody kind of asks you very personal questions in the initial kind of fledgling stages, I would kind of reflect it onto them and just say, just, you know, briefly answer and then reflect and just say, well, tell me about you, and ask them a sort of similar question, and just try and get, you know, some reflective information back from them, and try to avoid going too deep into your own, you know, telling your kind of best kept secrets, or your, you know, although it might feel wonderful, and the prospect of thinking, oh, I have a man that I can really relate to and tell all my innermost thoughts to, it's not the right route to go until you really do know someone, like a good few months into your relationship. And I know that sounds like a long time, but it's just a stepping stone. Into, you know, it's just little stepping stones to get into that relation. A relationship takes a long time to develop, and, you know, patience is really, really important in those first kind of 6 months. That's very steady.
That's so sound, Lorraine, because I think you're right. It's really easy to have that sense of, oh my goodness, this person cares so much, they want all this information. The thing is, what do they want the information for? And that's the bit that you need to be, you know, not so aware of that you now think everybody's devious, but to understand that, you know, just impart it as you feel comfortable to.
You know, I'm not saying that everybody that asks those kind of in-depth questions is going to, you know, end up being a controller or an abuser. That's not the case. You know, some people do wear their heart on their sleeves, and they're very open themselves, and so they, you know, they naturally kind of want to engage in that kind of conversation. But from a woman's point of view, I would always say, just be cautious, and only just drip feed little bits of yourself. Until you've really got to know them and you've seen their character. And that's why I always encourage people to go on dates that aren't necessarily just your regular kind of coffee, or, you know, the first date should always be a walk or a coffee or something, and then, you know, maybe a lunch or something like that. But then I would progress it onto doing something where you see a little bit deeper into that person's personality. You know, perhaps doing an event together, you know, going sailing, going ice skating, doing something where you can actually see, you know, what happens to this person when they are being challenged. You know, do they lose their temper? Do they keep controlled? Are they easy? You know, do they sulk after if something doesn't go their way? And that's a great kind of way early on, you know, perhaps the third date or something, rather than just keep doing the same thing, you know, before intimacy, to actually see what are the makings of this person. And it's so important. And again, you know, if you see those little red flags, you see somebody getting really angry, even they might not get angry at you, they might get angry at somebody else, or, you know, flare up at something, or go into their shell, or all those types of things are you know, good to be cautious of. I also think it's important to, in those early fledgling relationships, to keep yourself open to meeting other people, and do meet other people, because again, sometimes people get so consumed in this one person, they'll overlook the red flags because this is all that's available.
Yes.
And again, that's a very unhealthy route to be. So even if you meet someone and you think, oh, this is really promising, I really like that you know, that he said this, or that, you know, he said that, or that he does this or he does that, just keep all those other options open, because, you know, they might just be great to fall back on if it doesn't work out, and, you know, you still have that little bit of kind of joy in your life.
Yes. We all want joy in our life. So
yeah.
yes.
Rather than putting all your eggs into one basket, as you know, wonderful as that basket might look.
Indeed. Great advice, Lorraine. I love that. Great. We'll have one more break and then we'll come back and just want to speak to you a little bit more about relationships and self-care, the relationship between those two things. So we are back, and we have Lorraine, who has been sharing some amazing advice and tips about relationships, how we can operate safely online, the whole thing around the red flags, things that we can look out for when we do meet somebody. And one of the things that's obviously dear to my heart is self-care, women in self-care, and women giving themselves time and space to just do them, you know, and really to look after themselves from the inside out. And I have seen it many times, and I'm surely going to have to put my hand up and say I have been there too, where you've kind of met somebody and it's all consuming and it's all about this amazing, wonderful person, and everything else goes on the back burner, including yourself. How do we go into relationships and maintain ourselves whilst also building this relationship with this person?
Okay, so that's a really good point. And I think the crucial thing is to not be defined by your man. So you know, it depends, all different age groups, you know, it depends how confident, how self-assured you are in yourself. I think it's so important to have a completely separate life and sense of who you are, not just going into a relationship, but when you're in a relationship as well. A relationship is so much more healthy and stimulating for both you and your partner when you both have outside interests and things going on separate from your relationship. You don't have to do everything together. You don't have to live in each other's pockets. To me, it's just going down the wrong route. You know, you might even have a partner and you might yourself feel sometimes a little bit left out, perhaps if your partner has friends, you know, male or female, and that they get something from that they not get from you, they don't get from you. But if we're truthful, we often feel, I mean, I know that I get certain things from my meeting up with my friends, you know, my daughter, certain joys in life that I don't get from my partner. That's not to say that I don't get amazing joys from my partner, but sometimes they're different, and you have to have that balance. It can't all be that the only love and joy and fun that you get in your life is defined by your partner and what you do with your partner. And in terms of your actual relationship, even if there are those little feelings, you know, and those little kind of mini sulks, or, you know, they are actually quite healthy, as long as they don't go too deep. But I quite like it. I've been with my partner for 16 years and I quite like it that he feels a little bit kind of, I wouldn't say jealous or envious, but a little bit curious sometimes as to where I'm going or what I'm doing, or because it's stimulating. He's interested to know, and when I come back and I tell him all about it, and I've perhaps had other experiences that then I can introduce him to, and he the same, you know, when he does things with his friends and his family, he can come back and tell me about something, and it just makes for a much healthier and happier and stimulating relationship. So it's totally, you know, a massive important aspect of your relationship, that you have an outside life and you don't define yourself by your partner. So that's my best advice, really.
Fantastic.
It is, and life is about, you know, a series of reinventions. You know, I'm actually one of my novel, and I'm writing a novel at the moment about somebody that has constantly had these kind of reinventing herself during her life. And I think that's so important and crucial, to just keep reinventing yourself. It doesn't matter how old you are, what stage you are in your life. Sometimes that might mean, you know, introducing new friendships or new activities, or you know, to somebody that can perhaps help enable that new reinvention. Because sometimes, you know, your friends or your family just know you, who you are, and they refuse to kind of, they're just like, oh, here she goes again.
Yeah,
Off on one of her
exactly.
but it's you know, food for the soul, for you to reinvent yourself and feel like you're progressing in life and you're making the right decisions. And we all do it. And I think children actually really help you to do that, but so too does a new partner, because, you know, they've had a different life to you, and they can perhaps show you a different way. And it's not to say that your previous way has been all wrong. That might have been right for that time.
Yes.
But sometimes it's clear that it's time to adopt a new way forward and a new way of thinking. And I've done it so many times. I'd say probably on average, you know, every kind of 7 or 8 years, I've reinvented myself and you know, had a sort of major change, even during my relationship, and my relationship has changed for it.
Yes.
Hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so important to, you know, not be tied to your old kind of
Your
routine,
old self.
exactly.
Yeah, because it's growth, isn't it? I mean, if we are, you know, we're meant to be constantly growing. If we're constantly growing, we're shedding old as well, right? That's part of the growth process. So yeah,
Sometimes it's about going full circle. You know, sometimes you kind of rediscover something about you. You know, I remembered coming out of, I remembered literally having a skip in my step, you know, with having a group of friends. In my first relationship with my daughter's dad, I didn't have a group of friends outside. It was always friends that were, you know, a very small network of married, you know, couples.
Yes.
And I started to kind of open up, you know, friendships. Perhaps it was like the you know, the woman of a couple that had since separated or something like that. Just you know, those, and then obviously friends through, you know, meeting my daughter's you know, parents of my daughter's friends at school, etc., and nursery. Yeah. And I remember literally having a skip in my step, because I rediscovered that joie de vivre that I'd had as a teenager before I'd met my partner, that I'd completely lost. I'd become this grown-up, sensible, responsible person.
Yes.
And here I was in my sort of, you know, early 30s, mid 30s, rediscovering that, you know, here's my sense of fun, which I completely lost. Wow. So sometimes it's not a case of just reinventing it, it's a case of rediscovering.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got to really, you know, I think, count your blessings. You've got to, you know, realize how lucky you are. And I think, again, in relationships, people need to kind of, rather than looking on the downside and the negatives within their relationship, you know, focus on the good things that are going on. And you know, sometimes it gets to, it's got to be a balance. Sometimes it gets to a point where the negatives have just completely overtaken the positives, and yes, you know, that's maybe a good time to either get out or have a break, or, you know, have some coaching or counseling or something. But sometimes you can actually do it yourself. Sometimes you can just take a step back and you just think, okay, I'm going to just picture, you know, all the great things about my partner and try and keep those in my mind, rather than these silly little kind of quibbles that we're having. Sometimes it's just resentment that's building up. And sometimes it's good to just get that out of the way and talk about it, open up that can of worms and get rid of the resentment, and then get back to knowing what you love and like about your partner. And the same with him, with you, you know.
Very sound and wise advice there, Lorraine. Loving that. Well, listen, I am absolutely certain that some of our listeners will be wanting to find out how they can connect with you. So do you have some contact details that you'd like to share so people can find out more about the Gorgeous Network and maybe even your PR work?
Yeah, I mean, our website is gorgeousnetworks.uk. Our email address is info@gorgeousnetworks.uk. And yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to answer questions, and that, it says that on our website, not only about the other services and apps and events and things that we review and talk about, but we also offer our own range of Gorgeous Network services on our website as well. So anything through from matchmaking to single of the week, we have a single of the week that we showcase every week, to our own little Club Gorgeous, which is an amazing little club.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lorraine, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom and knowledge and advice and tips. It's been a joy and an absolute pleasure to have you on the Women's Power Hour show.
It's been a pleasure for me. It really has. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been great. And you've asked some great questions as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Thank you.